Late last fall, during the end of the bow hunting season, I bought the newer Sitka Fanatic jacket, the 2019 version that they redesigned to make it much quieter, and the left-handed version, because I'm left-handed, as well as a Fanatic pack. So I'll be reviewing the jacket, yes, but then I'll also be talking about it kind of in the context of how I would use it and when I think it makes sense, what things it's good at, what things it's not so good at. Real quick on the specs. Price, like most Sitka stuff, is not cheap. You get people that either think it's too expensive, or you get the people who buy it and say it's the best thing ever. So keep that in mind as I go through the rest of these items. The size large, which is what I have, is 46.2 ounces. And it's not so much the weight, it's more just like the bulk. You know, the smallest I can make this jacket, and I think a large part of this is not due to the insulation so much as it is that Berber fleece. It just doesn't compress very well. Like, this is the smallest I can get it. It's like a, medium-sized sleeping bag. So from a mobile hunting perspective, it's not the most packable jacket by any means, especially when you compare it to like a puffy jacket. So this would be like the First Light Chamberlain, which is a down. This jacket has a very high clo value. It's very warm, and you can see I can compress it much smaller. But it's not nearly as quiet, it's not nearly as feature rich, so there's definitely some trade-offs. I talked a lot about just kind of layering philosophy in some of my podcasts last year, where does it make more sense to pack in a parka, or does it make more sense to pack in a puffy coat and then just wear like an oversized windbreaking shell on your way into the woods and then just relayer that puffy jacket underneath the shell once you get on stand, which is more efficient, I think, but there's definitely still a use case for packing in a parka. So here's how I would typically go about wearing this. For my next to skin, I'm always wearing my Numa heated vest when it gets really cold. It's a synthetic next to skin layer that has battery powered heat. Over the top of that, I wear a mid-weight, either merino wool, or in this case, this is an alpaca merino blend. Over the top of the base layer, I bring some kind of wind protection, assuming it's gonna be windy. Obviously, if it's dead calm, I wouldn't need this layer. But I find that if I'm just walking in with base layers and it's cold and it's really windy, man, that if you got a 30, 45 minute walk in, even though you're creating heat, that wind still just bites at you. So I like some kind of little bit of a wind protection. But I'm definitely not wearing something like this into the stand. I'd say there's maybe 5% of the time when maybe I got a place where I can leave something overnight and I've got it set up just so I can be nice and quiet and I know exactly where I want to go. It's not like a late season food source or something like that. And I can just kind of sneak in there real nice and quiet, take my time, and it's cold enough that I'm not gonna generate a lot of heat on the way in, then I could see potentially wearing this in. But for the vast majority of scenarios, I'm gonna be packing this garment separately. Once I get to the tree, I would zip up my windbreaking layer. If I really felt like I needed it, I might bring in some additional puffy insulation, but then I'd be going for the jacket. I would take it out of my pack. Once I've got everything set up, so I put my sticks in the tree, I get up to hunting height, I hang my platform, I get tethered in, then I reach into my pack, take this thing out and put it on inside the saddle. Once you put the jacket on, it does have this offset zipper system, so it doesn't just go right up the middle. It comes in from the corner and then goes all the way up. Just drop my microphone in that pocket. So this pocket right here, it's intended to be used as kind of like an accessory grunt tube pocket or whatever. It's got a little mesh here, just so that it's not kind of blocking the natural sound out of that. But what I could see myself using this pocket for is my microphone system, right? I got my little, Rode Wireless Go or whatever I'm gonna be using, and I got some kind of wired microphone that I can go ahead and just kind of snap on right here to the collar, and then that just stays nice and tucked out of the way. In terms of the collar itself, you can put it all the way up. There's no hood, but there is a safety harness pass-through in the back of the collar if you're hunting out of a tree stand. And that safety harness pass-through is not just a hole, it actually detaches, so you could have your safety harness underneath, put the jacket on over the top, and then make that closure over the top so you don't have to actually disconnect in order to feed it through a hole. Since there isn't a hood, it's intended to be used with a beanie style hat as well as a face mask, which I think is nice from a certain extent because I never feel like I can hear well at all with hoods on. Doesn't matter what kind of garment it is, especially puffy jackets. I hate hooded puffy jackets in a tree stand. So I feel like with a combination of a beanie and a face mask, I can get a little bit better control over how much I can hear. But you can see with this collar up, there's really not much interference here in terms of being able to draw my bow back and being able to shoot. This whole inner sleeve here, and this is the left-handed version, is just clear of that Berber fleece material, and you can see the inner elbow on the other side also is kind of void of that fleece, and obviously the right-handed version would be opposite of this. But I don't feel at all, for a jacket of this bulk, I don't feel like at all it's constraining my movements at all, or feeling like it's preventing me from comfortably being able to draw back my bow. The other thing you can do with this collar is you can drop it down, and there's a magnetic closure right there. And for me, this particular way of having it gives me a little bit more opportunity to actually touch my bowstring against it. But again, with a really short string angle, like on this bow, or really small string angle, it just clears. But if you have a more traditional bow axle to axle length and a more traditional string angle, then you're definitely going to want to make sure that you've got this thing set up in such a way that that zipper is exactly as tight and as flat as you can get it, to where, I'll try it again. And you can see now I have that string clearance. So definitely just kind of make sure if you have that collar down that you're getting the adequate string clearance that you need. One thing about this jacket that I particularly like is this muff that's built in. It's behind the windstopper material. You got a zipper right here that you can throw heat in, but also on the inside of this pocket, there's like a little bit of a mesh kind of inner pocket to where you could throw in a heat source inside that actual muff itself and have that pretty much right against your hands for that more immediate warmth. Occasionally, if I'm in the saddle, I'm just kind of leaning against the bridge. You know, if I have my hands right here, as opposed to if this thing was higher up, I do feel my hands, you know, against that bridge a little bit more, but it really isn't that big of a deal. And then in terms of sizing and kind of fit, I'm about 6 foot 190. I wear large for a whole bunch of stuff that I buy. And this is no exception. I have the large size in this jacket. And I feel like it's fairly roomy. It's a good fit, but it also is intended to be kind of layered underneath. So for example, you know, I could throw another insulated vest underneath this and still be fine. And I'll actually show right here. So I just put that big, huge puffy jacket underneath this, and you can tell that although that insulation is compressing a little bit, you can just look at how much bulk is here. You can see how much of that it actually expands to be able to hold in. And I still feel like, even with all of this underneath this jacket, I can still draw that bow back and still feel like I'm not overly constrained. There's a whole lot of size large outer jackets where I try and put that puffy underneath and I feel like I can't move. So it's kind of interesting that this jacket, number one, I feel like I can layer underneath it if I need to and still maintain a decent level of mobility. But at the same time, if I don't have it layered underneath, it doesn't feel like it's baggy or loose. It still feels like it fits fine. So I'll just show a quick demonstration of just packability with, you know, their Fanatic pack system too. And I'll show it with the incinerator bibs, and comparing the incinerator series with the Fanatic in the stores, the incinerator does pack down considerably more compact. So from a mobile hunting perspective, and if you have weight as a constraint, or not weight, if you have size and just overall bulk as a constraint, the incinerator is worth looking at, and it's more expensive, but it is waterproof, but it's also noisier than the Fanatic is, especially when it gets cold. So there's some trade-offs there. So I got the Fanatic pack here, and I'll do a separate video on this as well as the newer tool bucket pack, and just kind of explain how I would use them, where again I see some pros or cons with the various systems, but we'll show just how this packs up. I'm going to put the jacket in first, because the jacket is the second thing that I would remove from the pack and put on. I put the bibs on first. So I got everything in there. I'll go ahead and cinch that cord. Okay, so there's the pack with my sticks, and I found that the Predator platform actually fits pretty well in the water bladder pouch area of this pack too. So I mean, there you go. That's kind of how I would walk into the woods then. With this amount of weight in the pack, You can go a pretty decent ways and it's not too big of a deal. If I wanted to add camera gear to this too, it would be obviously a little bit harder to pack. I'm really not in an excess of space in terms of what that pack can continue to carry. But that would be the point too where I might be looking at upsizing the pack and get something with hip belt too, just because the weight is starting to get up with all the additional layers. If you had both the Fanatic jacket and the Fanatic bibs, I think you should be able to get them both in this pack, but it's gonna be a tight squeeze. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to go with the Incinerator bibs as opposed to the Fanatic bibs, because I don't feel like my lower body is moving as much and is making noise as much potentially as the upper body is. So I would rather have, I guess, the additional packability of those Incinerator bibs. So that was kind of why I made the decision to have Incinerator bibs, Fanatic jacket. So then lastly, let's talk about warmth. Like I mentioned, when I emailed Sitka about this, they said that the Incinerator series was warmer than the new Fanatic series. So I'll just take their word for it because I don't have both the Incinerator jacket and the Fanatic to compare. But when I was hunting with these last winter, man, I kept hoping for really cold days, but we kept getting like temperatures in the like 20s and maybe even low 30s, which is, fairly warm for end of December, January timeframe. So in the tree, I never really had a great chance to really put it to the test. So what I ended up doing was, after the season was over, you get a big cold front in January, February out here. I mean, you have wind chills in the negative teens, no problem. And so whenever we'd get days like that, I'd come home from work, it'd be dark out already. I'd go out in the backyard and just put the layers on, hook up my saddle at ground level and just sit there for like an hour and just see, how things felt. Was the wind coming in? And then I would go back inside, take it off, acclimate back to the warm weather again, do the same thing with another system. And, I gotta say, when you get out in that cold weather, having the parka like this, it really just, once you're in the tree and once you're set up, it just works really well. I would say that from an efficiency standpoint of being able to carry things into the woods and kind of a weight and packability perspective, then that oversized shell with the packable insulation like a puffy underneath makes more sense from that perspective. But once you get in the tree, man, the big parka like this is nice. The really only big downside to it is that bulk when you carry it in. It is super bulky, it is not mobile friendly, but once you're in the tree, it works really well. The mobility is great. It does a really good job of blocking the wind, and I feel like I can layer underneath it even more if I want to. So from that perspective, if it gets really cold, I could definitely see myself, this could be like the, biting the bullet, so to speak, and just packing in the bulky garment just to kind of ensure that I'll have that nice, quiet, late season piece that I know is gonna keep me warm, keep me out on the stand. So I hope this overview was kind of helpful. I probably didn't go over every single feature that's built into this jacket, but I think I at least covered the ones that are most relevant to the way that I hunt and the way that a lot of followers of this channel probably hunt. So if you have any additional questions, please drop them in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.